Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP from the Sachsenring in Germany. And I'll start off by apologizing for the 1 hour delay. I have a very good story to back it up. So, my beautiful little boy has recently started playing soccer, and he's a Man United supporter, just like me and all his friends at school. So, he's desperate for a Man United kit for his next soccer session on Wednesday. So, I found a really good kit on Marketplace. And I thought it was in Farnham, which is literally 10 minutes up the road from me. I typed it in, it's in Fareham, which is closer to Portsmouth, which is an hour drive for me. So, just going with the flow, kind of hopped in the van, driving an hour on the way to Fareham. I look, 5:30, and I click. I've got Talking MotoGP tonight from 7. So anyway, I get the kit, rush home, sprint home, get home, get inside, cuddle Novi, cuddle Trey, give the wife a kiss. I'm going to run upstairs to do a live, and Trey says to me, "Daddy, please, can we play football with my new kit?" And he just gives me like these saddest little boy eyes, like, "Please, can we play football?" And normally I would say, "No, boy, I'm busy. I've got a thing to do." But I was like, you know what? I'm going to take an extra 45 minutes and go play some football with my boy in the park. So that is why we are delayed. And I am sorry, but I decided to go play some football with my boy in the park. That's maybe why I look a little bit luminous red at the moment. I'm still recovering from my football game with my boy. But thank you so much, everyone, for understanding and sticking around. I saw a lot of you were having your own little comments already in the comment section. So that's great that you took your initiative and got that going. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Already the names are coming in. I'm not going to go crazy tonight. Mike Teal, hello for second time tonight from my grandson Liam Townsend and myself. Mike, thank you so much for joining. Sorry I was delayed. And Liam, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you can stay up a couple of minutes before bedtime to tune in and listen to what we have to say. Got a very special guest with me tonight, Sven Grune, former motorcycle racer in South Africa. He won the ZX10 Masters Cup multiple times, very top good kind of regional racer, did a little bit of national racing as well. So we were able to get Sven as our inside reporter at the Sachsenring run. So I'm going to bring him in. It was his first ever MotoGP. Just, chat to him about the experience, being as a journalist in there, and just the kind of, how he saw it all play out, and the different perspective he got from a fanboy being able to be there as a journalist, and how his experience was. So that's going to be really interesting to see. Keanu Hutchinson, what is your favorite track in MotoGP? Keanu, I must be honest, probably I would have said 100% the Red Bull Ring before they put that silly chicane in, but they've added that silly chicane. Mugello, probably, as a spectacle to watch, and that Mugello was absolutely awesome. It was fantastic. So that's a tough question to answer because there are so many amazing circuits. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our evening's guest. It is Mr. Sven Grune. Sven, how are you doing?
Yes, how's it, Rob? How's it, Motor Rider World of fans? Hope everything's good.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy that we could put that deal together where you were able to go and experience MotoGP, your first ever MotoGP, not only as a fan sitting on a grandstand, but you were able to really get in the mix and experience the inside world and the inside workings of Dorna and MotoGP and everything. So just give us a quick little highlights before I jump into all the in-depth questions and we really dive into and analyze as much as we can. Just kind of your perspective of being able to experience a modern MotoGP race, as from the inside, service roads, in the paddock, seeing the riders. How was the experience as a fanboy?
Yeah, look, while I've been over here, I went to like two races now. One in Paul Ricard which was a 9-hour classics. So I got used to the big crowds. I went to World Superbikes at Le Mans. But totally different to MotoGP. From when I went to get up the credentials and the pass to just the whole weekend, how well organized it is and how smoothly everything runs. I can't say I saw any issues at all the whole weekend. And it just puts things into perspective. It's easy for us, like you said earlier, while we were chatting off air, how easy it is to criticize everyone online and yeah, and when you're there, you get to realize that this is actually real. These people are real. The guys are putting all the effort they can into this to give a good show. So that's the biggest takeaway for me from having been there the whole weekend. And so just those 4 days that I was there, sheesh, I'm tired today, eh? That walking around that track all day in that bright cooking sun, oh, it was hectic.
Yeah, I try to. It's hard to get the point across when you're able to do MotoGP, from the inside like this. And I struggled last year because I'm this fanboy, and I said to you, put comfortable shoes on because you're going to be walking, because you try and do the paddock. You want to see all the riders. You want to act professional and not do selfies, but then you're there and they're your heroes, and you're like, I'm going to do selfies, and you get a whole new perspective. You get a whole new respect for the spectacle. I like the way that you described it before we came on air. When you're on the outside, you watch it as like it's a big brother, like a reality show, and you feel you have the right to pick everything apart in pieces. And as fans, we are, these riders, and MotoGP is property to us, and we feel the need that we can do whatever we want with it. But when you're a fanboy and you get to get into it and really get to see the inner workings of it, my mind was blown last year by it all. And I had a whole new respect from even riders that, I don't want to say I didn't have respect for, but riders that I wasn't too kind of, supportive of, and the way they went about things. You kind of have a new perspective on them because, there's two sides to every story, as they say. And sometimes us as MotoGP fans and media can be very critical because we have the right to be. They are our property. We can. But when you're in there and you see the inner workings and you see how much effort, time, and like you said, the logistics of it all, when that goes into it, you kind of broaden your horizon and you go, right, this is a serious thing. I've got to approach this differently. And my whole perspective of that changed. The way I commented on riders, the way I looked at riders, the way I looked at teams, and the way they approach things. Even the whole Ducati thing, when Ducati first came in with 8 Ducatis, it was like, oh, it's not fair and whatever. You look at it now and you go, well, first of all, there would be 16 bikes on the grid if there weren't 8 Ducatis. Second of all, they poured their heart and soul into this and their resources, and they've upped the game. So why should they be smacked on the wrist and given all this flack when they're doing more than everyone else? So those kind of things is what you get into, and like you said, your whole perspective changes, and you really do change your mindset. I've always said it. I wish I could give every single fan that tunes in here, every single fan, that opportunity to experience like the way that you have now and that I've been able to do, because that really, it turned me into, I didn't think I could love MotoGP more until I got to experience it like that.
No, 100%, especially with the Ducatis. I mean, they deserve to be where they are. They remind me of what Yamaha used to be. Like the way they, at Sachsenring being such a tight track, I mean, they dominated. That's what Yamaha was good at, rolling through the corners and tight tracks, keeping the corner speed up. And that's what Ducati's doing well now. You would have never thought so 2-3 years ago. So, yeah, and there's just that they're real people and very friendly. On the Thursday when I got there, and I had to take selfies. I mean, these are my heroes, you watch them every weekend when they're racing. So, yeah, that selfie, I didn't care about that. I had to get some memories at least. And also, behind, I've done took a lot of pictures as well. So I missed a bit of the racing itself but I love taking the pictures and the memories that way.
That's the only problem. You actually don't get to watch any racing. I did that. I'd get home on the Monday and Tuesday and sit and watch the racing because you're actually so high strung that you don't actually get to just sit on your couch and watch the racing. So that's one of the downsides, is that you miss a lot of the action points, because when you watch it on TV, you go, oh, I didn't see that happen, or I didn't see that. But it's almost like, and I went to 13 last year, I went to 1 this year. I thought by the 5th or 6th one, I'd kind of be ingrained in it, and the fanboy kind of would have died down. I don't. I still get hyped up. I walk in there. I can't hide my smile. All the teams in that kind of look at me. It's that Rob from Motor, that South African from Motor Rider World. He's going to come in here and talk our ears off and stuff. But it's hard. It's hard not to be a fanboy when you're at a racetrack and you hear those bikes and you see them. You can't explain to people the colors, on TV just don't do it justice. The sound doesn't do it justice. Those pictures that you took of the bikes just parked there with the discs off and the wheels and the technology and all the buttons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's overwhelming in many ways.
No, it is. It's so much. It's actually overload. When you first get there, that Thursday, you just see everything. You want to go and see everything, and you just walk and walk and walk. So yeah, but it's great. I love the tech as well. It's not just the racing, but just the tech and the bikes themselves. It's just beautiful. And when you go into the pits, and like especially that, I don't know if I posted a picture. The Moto3 team, how small the pit actually is, and they have to work in that,
Yes.
And it was hot. It was hot over the weekend. Okay, we had rain in between, but especially Sunday, they're cooking, so, and they must work in those conditions. Yeah, respect to them,
It is. It is a newfound respect. Dustin Delaporte, Uncle Rob, where can I buy that cap you have on? So I think it's binderracing.com. You can go onto that website, buy it. They're available in South Africa. If you're outside of South Africa, I think if you go on 100%, who sponsor Brad, this is part of his 100% range. You go on 100%, you can buy it off there if you're international. But for the SA market, go on to binderracing.com or .co.za. Just double check when you can buy it. Sven, okay, quickly, the big news before we delve into the racing, the big news again on the weekend is Honda and Marc Marquez. Terrible. This was always going to be a perfect kind of guide to where Honda, not Marc Marquez. People keep commenting about Marc Marquez, he must retire. It's Marc, to me, is still the fastest man in MotoGP. I mean, you must give me your complete, honest point of view. His bike is letting him down at the moment. So coming into this weekend, a track where he's won 11 times in a row, he's dominated Sachsenring, this was going to be a good indication of where the Honda is. Not necessarily Marc Marquez, the Honda is. And it failed miserably. I mean, Marc, some of those crashes, it looked like he was riding on a rain track with slicks with some of those crashes, and he wasn't. He wasn't. Dry setup, dry tires, and I mean the thing was just letting go. Taka Nakagami still said in his last crash on the Sunday morning warm-up, I was behind Marc, he didn't do anything crazy, and the thing flung him off. Taka Nakagami had a big crash. This Honda, I hate to say it, it's a death trap. And for Marc Marquez to come out on Sunday, and I'm glad he did, because who knows what else could have happened, come out and say, I can't race this thing, mentally, but more physically, I can't race this thing. Give us a little bit of vibe of what you felt within the paddock and what you take away from this weekend of where Marc Marquez is and Honda.
Look, I actually didn't see much of Marc Marquez or any of his debriefs. I had to come home now after the weekend and have to put on the TV and watch all the races and that. But what I took away is his crash and warm-up. When they panned in on him after the crash, and he was sitting next to the track, and you could see his eyes. He still had his helmet on, but you could see it in his eyes. He was totally deflated, and you've never seen him like that. Like the day before, in qualifying, the day before, he crashed, he jumped up, he hobbled to his bike, got back on, or even ran across the track. And that's the first thing he wants to do. But in that shot, you could see he's had enough. He didn't want to get on that bike again. And I mean, 5 crashes over the weekend. Yeah, it's hectic. Is he still fast? Of course he's still fast. He's still one of the best riders. I think the other guys have caught up a lot, Yeah, but I mean, Sachsenring, and he is nowhere. 10th. What did he finish? 10th? 11th?
Yeah, 11th.
In the sprint races. Yeah. That must be hectic for him to be, for his ego, so to say, as well.
Bradley Johnson says, do you think the Honda's biggest challenge is getting the tires in their operating windows? To me, that seems to be a big issue. Look, it's a good question. The tire, I don't know. The way the bike lets go is that there's just no warning. It's a snap kind of action, front and rear. And Marc's just not able to ride it anywhere. It just seems like that bike just doesn't want to be ridden. I said, and I don't know if you got up close to the bike, but when I saw all the bikes at Portimao at the beginning there, you stand next to the Ducati, you can see a silhouette and you can see a balance there. You look at the KTM, there's a bit of a balance there. The Aprilia, that Honda just looks so disjointed to me. The front's down here, the rear's up here. And Honda's biggest problem is, and this is my take on the whole Marc Marquez thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or give me your aspect. My take is Marc Marquez gave Honda an ultimatum. He's lost 2-3 years out of his career with an injury. He cannot waste time developing a bike. He needs a bike to work now. So Honda went and they right. We're going to take the rear winglets of the Ducati. We're going to take the fairing of the Aprilia. And they kind of took all these aspects that were working on the other bikes, bolted them onto their bike, and it just doesn't work. Modern day MotoGP just cannot work like that. And now they're finding out that they've got this disjointed bike. They've got this unbalanced bike that just has no kind of symphony to it. It's got no balance to it. It's all over the place. And Honda's biggest problem is now they almost have to do a KTM and an Aprilia. They need time. They need 4 or 5 years to develop this bike. And their problem is they don't have that. Marc Marquez doesn't have that. And for Marc Marquez on camera to throw a zap sign at the bike after Mugello, where he's standing by it kind of looking like this, and he's sending messages to Honda in his debrief before the weekend even started. He said, I had a meeting with the second man in charge at Honda. It was a good meeting, but I'm almost tired of these good meetings. I need to see results. And then they still showed a shot, and the president of HRC. Now, for people, my time in the paddock, one of the big lessons I learned in terms of the Japanese manufacturers is the Japanese big bosses do not like leaving Japan. They do not like leaving their culture. They hate leaving Japan to go to European races. You don't see them very often compared to the Yamahas and that have big European divisions, and you see guys. So for the big boss of HRC to be at Sachsenring a week later, he probably climbed on a plane straight after the Marc Marquez crash on Sunday at Mugello, because Mark said to him, you better get your ass here. I want answers now. For him to be there was a big sign. But even a bigger sign was the fact that your motorbike is a death trap. You had one Honda finisher in the main race yet again. Taka Nakagami, I think, has been the only Honda finisher in the last 4 or 5 races. You've got 2 riders in hospital in Jean Mir and Alex Rins. Alex Rins out for a long time with a double leg break. You've got Marc Marquez just finishing 11th at the Sachsenring and then not wanting to ride on the Sunday. I mean, a lot of people have come out on social media and said, is this the end of Honda? Marc Marquez, you must retire. Again, I don't think it's Marc Marquez that must retire. Marc Marquez to me is still fine. The rider, Marc Marquez, the mentality still. If Marc Marquez was ready to retire, you wouldn't see a guy crashing. Before the bike's even stopped, he's up running back to pits to climb on a bike, to go out again and set lap times. That does not show me a rider that's ready to retire. That shows me a rider that's still committed, and you have to respect him for that. Love him, hate him. Sometimes Marc Marquez can be the biggest doers on the planet. I know that he can do the stupidest things in the world. But when I see a guy with that much determination, you have to respect it. Yes, okay, the Zarco incident, people going on about the Zarco incident, that was a complete racing incident. In fact, that is a track layout issue for me for Sachsenring. No way in this world should you have motorcycles coming out directly in the line of fire of oncoming traffic. And it was highlighted this weekend. We've never really said anything before because it hasn't been highlighted the way it is now. But, I get frustrated when I see people commenting about Marc Marquez, it's time to retire. It's time to retire. It's not Marc Marquez's time to retire. There's still plenty left in him. Honda is the big problem here now. So that's in a nutshell what I think of the whole thing. Sven, as a former racer, as a fanboy to MotoGP, what is your take on the whole Marc Marquez and Honda thing?
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, that incident with Zarco is purely a racing incident, and for them to change a track, it's going to be difficult there at Sachsenring. They can't just change it overnight, or the whole layout would have to change because of where the pits are. I just as joke-wise, I'd love to see him go to another manufacturer, and then we can settle this goat story from both sides. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, he's not finished. He should go to another manufacturer. And I think after this weekend, at one stage, I was thinking he might not even want to ride the bike for the rest of the season and just pull out and say, listen, I'm going to just let all my injuries heal properly and maybe get a different contract signed and then start again next year with a different manufacturer. Love to see him on a Aprilia. I mean, that bike is definitely capable of winning. Maybe Espargaro retires end of the year. Looks like he could be. He was hobbling around the paddock, and I think he's in pain. And he's got his family, and he loves his family so much. So maybe that is a possibility. And I mean, Aprilia really want to win a world championship, and they're capable of. So I'd love to see him go there before going to Ducati, And now even with Martin, I can't see him going to Yamaha. Why would he want to go to Yamaha now that he's come right now on this on the Pramac Ducati? Brilliant weekend for him.
Well, a lot of things came out of the Sachsenring weekend in terms of kind of the rider market and that. Jorge Martin, it would be suicide to climb on that Yamaha, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's kind of calmed down from the being rejected in many ways by the factory Ducati team. Although, was he rejected? He's got a factory Ducati contract on a factory Ducati in what I think is a better environment. It's that factory Ducati team and that environment is a hard place to kind of be yourself. And I think a Jorge Martin in that environment would bash heads. And I just think the Pramac is the best place for Jorge Martin to be. And imagine being that rider that can go win a championship in an independent team, in inverted commas, on a factory bike. But that's the motivation for me. If I was Martin, I would be like, I'll show these guys, I'll win on this bike in this team, beat the factory boys, take that number one plate. And that's what I would be looking at. So anyway, getting back to him, I don't think he's going to go the Yamaha route. And all of a sudden, out of the Sachsenring weekend, this Monday, today, now there's talk of Jake Dixon potentially going to MotoGP, and there can only be one place that he'll go, because it's the only rider that'll go there is Monster Energy Yamaha, because Morbidelli's going, I think. But that'll only happen if the Zarco move out of Pramac happens and Bezzecchi can fit in there, because so some riders are going to have to shuffle for sure to make that move happen. And Zarco proved again that he's a top rider, but we've seen this before from Zarco. And then he'll have 2 or 3 races where he kind of gets lost in the paddock and you forget about him. And then you talk about him moving, and then he puts these results in and you go, oh, well, why does he want to move? He's still a fantastic rider. So, I think to kind of end the rider market situation is, I think Yamaha don't have many options. They have Jake Dixon as an option. Who else is going to go there? Tony Arbolino's going Gresini Ducati in place of DJ Antonio. We know that. Martin would be crazy to leave. Bezzecchi potentially to Pramac Ducati alongside Martin. Johan Zarco to Factory World Superbike Ducati alongside Bautista, just to dominate there even more. We're going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. But it certainly is interesting what came out of that. The big story is getting back to Marc Marquez. Okay, cool. He's finished with Honda. I'm done. I need to move on with my career. I need to climb on a bike that's ready to go. I know people are talking about this Husqvarna team alongside Pedro Acosta. I know they're talking about Mark potentially coming into the factory KTM team, and Jack Miller potentially being booted if his results. I can't see any of that happening. I can see realistically a move that Aprilia go, right, Maverick's already starting to pull all his old tricks. He had a blown Aprilia, and he says, I saw his comments afterwards, pretty much blaming Aprilia and not himself. So who knows? Let's see if there's any onboard footage of Maverick trying to blow up an Aprilia. But yeah, I could see a Marc Marquez. It's not about the money anymore for Marc Marquez. It's not about the money. He needs to climb on a package that he can climb on, be competitive, and go and win. So listen, like you just said, it excites me at the thought of Marc Marquez climbing on another manufacturer and either proving people wrong that he is the greatest and he can go win on another manufacturer, or doing the same and crashing his brains out and kind of proving everyone right that, listen, MotoGP's moved on. It's time to call it quits and think about it. My question to you is, if Mark does that, what happens to Honda?
Jeez, that's a tough question, isn't it? I mean, everyone's wondering now they're going to go the same route as Suzuki and just decide to pull out. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
As Stephen Berry says here, and I just want to answer Mariska Hutchinson's question quickly. Rob, how different are the two chassis, Calyx and HRC? How different would it affect his riding to switch between the two all the time? So, Mariska, I mentioned this in my last talk as well. I think Honda need to just find a direction and go with it. There's chopping and changing, Calyx one session, HRC one session. They just need to find a direction and focus on it. The Calyx, I mean, the differences between the Calyx and the HRC, I don't know. It could just be, they got different pivot points and this and this and this, but feeling for Marc Marquez, Marc to me looks like the rider that likes a very rigid, hard kind of bike that just is very front end orientated. To be honest, I mean, Sven, I don't know if you can answer that question. What would the two differences be there? I honestly don't know.
When I was watching now, they had an interview with Lucha, I think it was, from LCR, and he was saying it's actually just built by Calyx. The specifications were from Honda, and he says it's just a different frame builder, so to say, which I don't know if that's just PR or if that is actually the case, that Honda gave them the specs and said to them, yeah, listen, right, build us their frame like this. And yeah, so it's difficult to know exactly, because they keep their cards close to the chest, so you won't ever really find out what the differences are.
Yeah, you would have seen in the paddock this weekend, you do get very scripted answers more often than not compared to what they actually want to say. I just want to climb in here with Stephen. Yeah, this is the comment I was looking for. Stephen Berry, who says hello, by the way, Sven. Stephen Berry, people are confused. Honda and Yamaha are fine. Problem is Ducati is 15 seconds a race faster than last year. And that is a very good point. Jonathan Borg also made it on his Facebook page. Is it a case that Yamaha and Honda have just lost the plot, or is it a case that Ducati have just taken it to another level, that the others are strong? Honda and Yamaha, certainly, even Aprilia, are struggling to keep up. And true, between 15 and 20 seconds, the race pace on Sunday was faster than last year's race that Fabio Quartararo won. Mm-hmm. Now, Fabio Quartararo finished 13th or whatever it is. I mean, and Sven, I don't know about you, but I watched a lot of those onboards when they went on board with Pecco or Brad, and those Ducatis just seem to pick and choose their line. They can make the track as short as they want when they want to, in those long left-handers where you've got to, rail it and keep it tight. They could just put those Ducatis wherever they wanted. Even when Martin was braking and Pecco was braking and going defensive, they didn't lose any time, any corner speed or anything. That if you look at Brad and Jack, especially going into that final corner where the others could brake and turn and hold the line, Brad and Jack had to brake, keep the bike as upright for as long as possible. They just couldn't trail brake and turn it the way the Ducatis were. They had to kind of get it, scrub, and then turn the bike late to try and make it. Whereas the Ducatis, the Ducatis are just this versatile bike that you can just put it wherever you want it. There was no running wide. There's no outbraking yourself. That Ducati is just inch perfect. And for 30 laps, for those guys to hit every mark, not make a mistake, and be as fast as they were, shows you obviously how good Pecco and Martin and those guys are. But it just shows you that, okay, is it really the Honda and Yamaha that bad, or is it just that Ducati are on another level at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me, bro?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, it's like the Ducati's like the Yamaha was. I mean, when Dovi was on the Ducati, he was complaining about mid-corner rolling speed and that. And now they've sorted it. Look at Sachsenring, how tight it is. And they come out the corner, they're going into the corner well. And looking at the KTMs, they struggled into turn 11 from down the waterfall into there. More Jack than Brad, but Brad was very strong out of the last corner onto the pit straight. That's where he was really strong. So I think, especially in the main race, looks like they sorted. I think he was saying that with in the sprint race he was spinning up a lot. So I think that was due to the soft tire, and running the medium in the main race helped him a lot. But even in the sprint race, he had so much torque or grip coming out of the last corner. It was good to see. But I think they, like Ducati was, where they're struggling mid-corner now, which we saw at Mugello, and he was saying as well in his interview in the press conference or in the media center, that's where they were struggling at Mugello, is the rolling speed through the corners.
And standing trackside, you do get a whole, talking about a different perspective. Standing trackside, you do, as a former racer, you would have seen, I mean, you analyze it, you would have been like me, you watch everything, and you can just see and hear the different engine notes and the different, gears and getting on the throttle and that, from watching trackside over the couple of days that you watched, I mean, what kind of things were you seeing with all the, the Aprilias, the Ducatis, and the KTMs, and the riders' riding styles, the Brads and the Pecos? What kind of notes did you take from watching them trackside?
As I said earlier, I was looking through the camera most of the time. So I prefer to watch it on TV. You see a lot more on TV and than from trackside. You just sit at one corner. So you don't pick up a lot really in that sense as much as you do on TV. But I think it was on the Friday. It looked like Brad's rear was pretty loose, especially coming down into the waterfall and then getting onto the brakes into that corner. So I don't know if that affected him at all or why they didn't have so much grip in the sprint race. Yeah, so that's about all. Like I say, behind the camera, you don't really see as much as looking. Yeah.
I just want to look here, touching on the Yamaha and the Honda point, because you can argue that Ducati have taken it to the next level. The fact still remains is that Honda and Yamaha haven't done enough to keep up. And if you look week in, week out, every single race, no matter where it is, KTM have Pit Byra, all the top KTM guys are there. Ducati have Gigi, they have Guidot, Chibati, they are all so invested in this. They are all there. Like I said, with the Japanese, you'll see Mr. Yamaha come out every now and then. You'll see Mr. Honda come out every now and then. You'll hear Mark, I've had a meeting once again with the HRC boss. Fabio's come out now and said, I've had a meeting with the big boss at Yamaha. We've got to do, there's this crisis control. Ducati and KTM and Aprilia, they've lost something. Aprilia, I'm not quite sure what it is, but they've lost something. But they're all invested and they're all at the track like you were. You get so much more when you're at the track and you're listening to riders and you're listening to other teams and you're listening to debriefs. There's so much information that you could take and work with being at the track compared to when you're not. And that's what Ducati, KTM, and Aprilia to an extent are doing, while Yamaha and Honda aren't. One of my biggest complaints last year, being with Darren involved with a team on the Yamaha MotoGP bike, was they just never listened to Darren. I would stand there and listen to what Darren was telling them, and then I would see kind of what they were doing. I mean, I didn't understand a lot of it, but they just weren't listening to what their rider was telling them. And Dovi was a good reflection on where Yamaha is as well. He climbed off a Ducati where he was competitive. Racing the Ducati is what made him a MotoGP legend. Climbed onto a Yamaha, couldn't buy a top 10. And it's just from my point of view, I look at it now and I go, it's investment. And that's why I get a little bit upset when I see people saying, oh, it's a Ducati show now. And yes, it is. And do we want to see 8 Ducatis inside the top 10 or whatever it was? No. But I'd rather see 8 Ducatis inside the top 10 than 16 bikes on the grid and, and uncompetitive machines riding around the back. I would hate to see that. At least Ducati are bringing this investment in, they're bringing this development in, and they're taking it to another level, and it's up to the others. Honda and Yamaha, the two biggest manufacturers in the world, compared to this tiny Ducati building bikes out of a factory in Bologna. It's crazy that Yamaha and Honda are being destroyed the way they are. There seems to be no answer at the moment from Yamaha and Fabio Quartararo. I don't know if you saw it in his debriefs or what your take on Fabio is. He's also just given up. From what I see on the TV and I read his debriefs, that Fabio that was fighting, ready to go put his life on the line for Yamaha, he's not there anymore. And could it be a fact that because now he's his own manager, he's got rid of his manager, he started his own management company, so has his focus gone a little bit off racing? I don't know, but certainly, and I've spoken about it plenty of times with Franco Morbidelli, the commitment's not there from the riders because they're not feeling the commitment or getting the reward from Yamaha and the team.
Yeah, I think you made a point earlier with Honda. The bike looks disjointed. I think they're just panicking and just throwing anything, looking at Ducati, what Ducati's doing, looking at Aprilia and just throwing stuff onto the bike. And they just lost their way totally. And with Yamaha, I don't know. maybe they just don't know what route to take. Funny enough, the debrief with Franco, especially the interview that everyone's seen now, where he's a bit funny. The one on Sunday, it seemed like he's riding better because he knows he's going. I don't know. I just get that feeling. I mean, he's so relaxed, and he, like you said, he's got a plan B, he's got a plan C. So yeah, I reckon he's not with Yamaha next year. I get that feeling. It's like the way he was answering the questions as well in the post race scrum. Yeah, so I reckon that's where he's out of there. And Fabio, like you say, yeah, maybe he's given up and thought, okay, I can't ride this bike the way I want to, and I don't want to end up like Marquez, crash 5 times in the weekend and then hurt myself. So maybe he's just saving himself a bit.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of scenarios. I see a couple of people, we all talk, right, Fabio's going to leave Yamaha, Mark's going to leave Honda. The reality is, where will they go? We've spoken kind of about Mark potentially going to Aprilia, which I think would be a great move. Again, it's hard for me to say this because I've dealt with Maverick a couple of times at the track now. He's always very inviting. When he sees me, he'll always stop and say, how are you? He doesn't know me personally. He doesn't know anything. He sees a face that he recognizes, and he sees me coming with a pen to sign stuff. But he's always like, hey, how are you? You again? I didn't see you at the last one. Signs it. Good luck. Cheers. So he's this great person and a good character and a nice, inviting guy. But in terms of, what we all expected him to achieve, it just hasn't worked. The Maverick Vinales, we kind of were all promised in testing in his early days when he stepped into MotoGP, coming from the Suzuki onto the Yamaha, this Maverick that threatened he was going to just dominate and be the next Rossi in many ways. It just hasn't developed. And what I see now is a Maverick that it's just not MotoGP worthy. Yes, we know the talent is there and you're going to get the odd good qualifying and the odd good race from him. Is that good enough in current modern day MotoGP terms? No, especially when you've got the likes of Marc Marquez, a Fabio Quartararo, even a Frankie Morbidelli in many ways waiting in the wings. Do Aprilia look at this and go, right, we've got this guy for another year. Aleix Espargaro, to all his credit, he did a fantastic job and brilliant, but the guy shouldn't be leading the line for Aprilia at the age of 37 with Maverick Vinales. Maverick's had 2 years with this project now. It's time for Maverick to shine. And now this Yamaha Maverick's coming back saying, it's not my fault. 4 races in a row with these problems. It's not my fault. It's Aprilia. Now that relationship's starting to turn a little bit sour. So I wonder if Aprilia will be looking at this going, you know what, let's go our separate ways at the end of the year. We can get Mark at a steal if he offers himself, because if that's Mark's only option, Mark will come and say, you know what, don't even pay me anything. Just cover all my expenses, put me on a good motorbike, and I will win a championship for you. And that's something that surely Aprilia know now they're not going to get from Aleix. As good as Aleix is and as good as he's been, his time's kind of up. I think he'll be a great test rider for them, as he's spoken about. But if I was Aprilia, I would be certainly talking to Mark and his team and saying, right, let's make a story out of this. Let's make a story out of this. Come onto our machine and win a championship. That'll prove all your haters wrong. That'll prove, Aprilia worthy. It'll be a kick into the face of many, many people. Let's make it happen. So I hope that happens. But then on the other side of the coin with Yamaha and Fabio, well, where does he go? Someone mentioned here, does he go to RNF Aprilia in place of Raul Fernandez, who's just, been the biggest mistake in MotoGP for a very long time now. He's just not there at all. But, what does Fabio do? And if Fabio and Mark leave, what does Honda and Yamaha do? Where do they get riders from?
Yeah, I don't think they can get rid of Maverick yet. If Paul, Alex goes, they need some consistency. So whoever is going to come in, they're going to have to keep Maverick, say for instance, or Alex. It's just the way I'd stick that. And who from Moto2 would be coming in then to take seats? Because it's a very interesting silly season coming up now in the summer break, to see where everyone's going and what's going to happen.
It is, but I spoke in my last one. I can't see a lot of, I mean, they're fast in Moto2, don't get me wrong, they're fast. But if anything, the Raul Fernandez and Remy Gardner, how that all played out and where they are, it wasn't really a good advertisement for Moto2 the last couple of years, because they've kind of just fizzled away, and they dominated Moto2 a couple of years ago. Arbolino, is he going to come in and do more than DJ Antonio's doing? I don't know. I didn't rate Arbolino. I didn't think he would be doing this well. I take my head off to him because he proved me wrong. Pedro Acosta, listen, there's a talent there. There's a big talent there, and KTM have got a big decision on their hands now. I think it's the 30th of June. They've got to make the decision. There's talk about KTM saying, no, we want to keep him in Moto2 for another year. Pedro Acosta's not going to wait in Moto2 for another year. He wants to get to MotoGP. Does he want to climb onto a KTM or a gas branded Tech 3 bike in place of Paulo Espargaro? Realistically, for me, that's the only move that he can potentially take, or that KTM can potentially offer him to keep him in the KTM stable. The other options for him, if Zarco does go, Pramac Ducati rather take a Pedro Acosta than promote a Bezzecchi, who's performing really well in the VR46 camp. But then what happens to Franco Morbidelli? So there's a lot of questions. And like I said, the Jake Dixon name came up now because I don't think Yamaha have many other options in terms of the second seat that Franco Morbidelli will leave. Could Franco's only option be to re-sign with Yamaha? These are all the questions that are going to, as the season plays out, are going to be answered. So we'll have to wait and see. We can only comment on speculation about that at the moment. But one good point that has been brought up here by Vickers Alberts, and I'll be interested to hear your comments and everyone else's down the side here. Let's talk about the title contender, Jorge Martin. He took, the English is very bad, yeah, Vickers, spell check's letting you down here. He took the fight very well to Pecco. I don't like him a lot, but he really is riding well. How was the 2-in-1 pass in the sprint? So Sven, give me your quick outline of what you think of Jorge Martin, and can you see him being a serious title contender?
Oh, definitely a contender. And I read somewhere, or heard somewhere, I think that last year he was getting Pecco's rejected engines, and this year he's on the exact same bike as Pecco's got. So now he's got no excuses, and he's showing it. I mean, he's gelled with the bike now, and he's definitely a contender now. He's so fast. It's taken him how many races now? He's up to where he should be, and everyone expected him to be in sprint races. I mean, he's ultra fast in qualifying, putting in those one lappers. Now he's stringing it all together for the sprint races, and winning his first was it his first MotoGP now that he won on Sunday? Second. Yeah, so it looks like he's getting there, and he's definitely the contender out of everyone. I think Bezzecchi's fading a bit now. For what reason, I don't know. And KTM still got a little bit too fond.
Yeah, there's still something. And look, Brad was in a podium position, unfortunately crashing out. I mean, we didn't get a full kind of replay of the accident, but Brad explained it in his debrief. He went into the left-hander, his foot slipped off the peg. You could see that from the brief replay that we did see, and he just tried to stop the bike, ran out of road, and down he went, and it looked like a big crash for Brad. Thankfully, I did see Courtney posted on Facebook saying Brad is battered and bruised, but he will be fine to race this weekend. So I'm sure the way he stood up and the way his helmet was damaged and the marshal was trying to get stuff out of his helmet, I thought, oh gosh, because like you, I didn't watch the race on Sunday. I only watched it Sunday night. But it was a big crash, but touch wood, Brad looks like he's walked away from that with no broken bones, and he will be at Assen. In what kind of condition he'll be in Assen, I don't know. But yeah, certainly KTM have made a step. There's no doubt about that. But, they've made this massive leap, and I don't think we realize what a massive leap it actually is. But the fact that Ducati have made even more of a leap is just kind of, pushing them back a little bit. So, yeah, I think the problem is you have a DNF like this in a main race. Brad's now, I think, 62 points or something behind. It really does dent you because, where you're going to make those points up. You're going to have to win kind of 2 races in a row to kind of make those points up. And this is where Jorge Martin has done so well. I think the sprint race, we always knew the sprint races were going to play into Jorge Martin's hands. He's that kind of rider. But it's given him that extra confidence to go for it on Sunday because he's now been able to iron out one or two problems in sprint races. An extra race for a rider like Jorge Martin. Jorge Martin is a rider that feeds off confidence. He feeds off, look at me. He feeds off the spotlight. And the sprint race, in many ways, has given him that. It's also given him extra saddle time. It's given him extra development time. It's given him extra time to work on himself. And over the last two race meetings, we're seeing this perfected version of Jorge Martin. And if that Jorge Martin, that mentality that he shows on Sunday, with a Pecco Bagnaia at his finest, and to beat Pecco Bagnaia at his finest, is a big statement. It is a big statement. Pecco Bagnaia, he would have come out of that going, okay, it's not the end of the world because I beat Bezzecchi, the Brad. I beat my main title contenders heading into the weekend. But coming out of it now, I have a new title contender. So now, the focus is going to shift now to a Jorge Martin because he's on the exact same motorcycle. He's proven that he's not scared to pass and that he can pass. He's proven that he's a winner in sprint races and in main races. So you start adding all those and you're ticking all those boxes. A couple of races ago, I kind of dismissed Martin as a title contender because he was still showing these little inconsistencies and stupid crashes and, silly mistakes. He's put those all to bed now. And like you said, on the same package as the championship, the champion, on a factory Ducati package, comfortable in his team where he is, there's no reason that Jorge Martin can go take Pramac Ducati and put a number one plate on an independent, where's my fingers?
Yeah.
An independent team there. And, I think that'll be good for the championship. I think it'll be good for the championship in many ways because it's the underdog in many ways winning, which is always a great story.
Conspiracy theory: would Ducati pull a bit of support that he does it, that Pramac doesn't win the championship instead of the factory? Yeah.
Listen, he's proven his talent time and time again. We know how fast Jorge Martin could be, but it was kind of like Fabio in his first year in MotoGP. We know you got the speed, but the current MotoGP rider needs the complete package: the mental game, the fitness, the speed, the development, the setting up a motorbike, the communication with the team, communication with the media. All those things have got to come into place. And Martin's starting to put that in, and he really did. I watched Martin this weekend and I went, whoa. I knew how good Martin was, but that Martin is on another level, especially when they went on the onboards with Pecco. Martin could break and go tight and he didn't lose. He made no mistake. Under all that pressure from Pecco Bagnaia, he made no mistake. And I like Pecco's kind of game strategy as well. He would drop back, tire cool off, close in again, try and make a move. So it was a real good game of cat and mouse. And Jorge Martin beat Pecco Bagnaia at his best. And that is a big statement coming out of that paddock this weekend. So
the other good thing is that Pramac is a good team. I mean, they're showing that they'll be able to set up that bike. Both of them. Look, Zarco also was super fast this weekend and finishing on the podium. So they know what they're doing in that team. It's not like some of the satellite teams like RNF at that stage that couldn't set up the bike. You see now, everyone, Miguel's on getting on the Aprilia, he's going to dominate. Yeah, but look at the team. Is the team able to give him that bike to get up front? Doesn't look like it at the moment. So yeah, Jorge's got the team behind him as well.
I always said that, what I saw with Darren last year was the team weren't able to give the rider what they wanted. Same with Dovi's side. The team weren't able to do that. And it was always my biggest criticism and worry heading into this season. Yeah, great, you've got Aprilias. That's fantastic. You still got to know how to set the things up. And, you saw it in South Africa. How many times would you go by the champion from last year, Clint Seller's Honda, with all that setup? Yeah, fantastic. I've got the fastest bike in South Africa. Okay, well, that means nothing if you've got no one that knows how to set the thing up, and you don't know how to ride it properly. So it's a bigger picture to the whole MotoGP game than what we see. And I've really come, and I'm sure you've come to, from this weekend, you've come to respect it a lot more and understand it a lot more from the inside rather than just sitting on the outside. Stephen Berry makes a very good point here. You go on about Brad 62 points behind, championship over, but with this year, 37 points available on a weekend with sprint races. And, Brad's kept himself in the hunt, and Pecco to an extent, with sprint races. You can have a bad main race, like in Argentina. I think it was Argentina where Brad had, but he made up for it in the sprint by winning it, type thing. So yeah, there's all these points up for grabs now, and it's a balancing act. You would have seen, I'm sure you would have felt the pressure in that paddock, the intensity in that paddock, because there's no time to rest. I don't know, and people always say to me, it must be so cool to hang around with Brad. You don't get to sit and chill. There's no sit and chill time, because you are always on it. There's always something to do. There's always prep. There's always media. There's always debriefs. There's no time. I mean, how many times did you see Brad in that entire weekend?
3 or 4 times, but that's in the media center.
Yeah.
The most I saw was Miller. I didn't see Marquez. I didn't see Bagnaia. So they're also super busy, And coming back with the points in that, okay, last year it was only Bagnaia and Fabio going for the title. Now you got a whole lot of different riders up there as well. So you're not just contending against one guy and trying to make up points for one guy. You've got 3, 4 other guys that you have to catch up with points. So it makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, and the comment here, going back to the Brad and the Ducati situation, Yanni Thunder says, Brad was riding the wheels off that bike. Sorry to say, though, the KTM is no match for a well-set-up Ducati. If he has to keep this up, he has a good chance of inheriting Mark's problems. And Yanni's got a point there, and it goes back to the point that Stephen Berry brought up about, are the others that bad, or is it just that Ducati are so good? And Brad was. All the riders are having to ride at 110% every single corner, every single lap to keep up with these Ducatis. And as I mentioned earlier, if I watch the onboards and I watch the Ducati riders riding, they're still riding at 110%, but it's a little bit easier 110%, because you've got this bike that's a little bit more versatile, that's a little bit more, it cooperates a little bit more. And that is where Ducati have got the stranglehold over this championship and over the others. So where we say that the KTM is a much better package, it is, but it's still having to be ridden almost over its limitations to stay with the Ducatis. And that is the problem. Jack Miller, Brad Binder, Aleix Espargaro, Maverick Vinales. And that is why, Aleix Espargaro came out after the race and said, because he went to the Rider Safety Commission, and it was him and like 3 other riders, because literally 6 other riders, 2 were in hospital that didn't even make it to Sachsenring. Marc Marquez had gone. Brad was, in the medical center. So there were all these riders that weren't able to make it because they physically couldn't. And Aleix Espargaro is saying, this is a big problem. What are we going to do about this? And it goes back to what I said a couple of Talking MotoGPs ago. The problem is, if you want to clamp down on safety and make MotoGP a much safer sport, you've got to slow these riders down. Because the problem is now, you're giving them these tools, the bikes, the tires in many ways and everything, to just push the limit every single lap, every single corner. So these riders 20 seconds faster than last year's overall race time in a 30-lap race. That's half a second a lap faster. And in MotoGP, that's a lifetime. So the only way you are going to make MotoGP safer is by making the riders go slower. That's the only way you're going to slow these guys down and not let them crash and destroy themselves every week. Mark and Honda are crashing because they are trying to keep up with Ducati. Yamaha, Fabio's just gone, well, I can't keep up with Ducati on this machine, and I'm not risking life and limb to do it. A Brad is risking life and limb to do it. Many of these other riders are risking life and limb to keep up with Ducatis. Ducati are just doing it a lot easier. So what's the answer then for MotoGP? I don't think it's the race stewards giving penalties, and because the riders aren't going to stop taking chances. We might see them think about it a bit more, but we've had penalties around now, the long laps in that, for 2-3 years, and the riders are still doing it because they're there to race. But one thing we are seeing is an influx of crashes and injuries. And, people can say, oh, it's the track safety and it's the gravel trap as much as they want. The fact is, these guys are going too fast. I love it because that's what I want to see. I want to see riders and machine pushed to the absolute limit. What I don't want to see is riders getting injured. And the fact is, the level is just ridiculously high now. And the only way you're going to make the sport safer is if you slow it down. You can translate it to the Isle of Man TT. The Isleman TT's got a lifespan of another 3 or 4 years. Why? Because it's just getting too fast now. They are, Sven, you would have known, we outgrew Swartkorps. Swartkorps was built when you rode 130, 140 horsepower bikes. When you rock up there on a 200 horsepower motorbike, your brakes overheat, the bike overheats because you've outgrown the track. You're pushing the limits and you're crashing and you're landing up in the wall. And unfortunately, riders are getting seriously injured there because you and your speed have outgrown the track. And that's what's happening in MotoGP now, is these riders are getting too fast. So when Aleix Espargaro says we've got to do something, well, the only thing you can do is, right, we're taking away wings, we're taking away aero, we're giving you more production-based tires to try and slow you down. Will it slow them down? I don't think so, because they've got the taste of the fast stuff. They've got the taste of the good stuff. So to go backwards now is not going to be good for the spectacle, for the riders. You think the teams and the manufacturers and the sponsors that have poured billions into this now just to go, sorry for you, we're going backwards. So what's the answer here? Restrict Ducati to try and bring them back on more of a level playing field? Is that fair to Ducati, who have got it right and spent the money? What's the end game?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You can't put a ban on development either, because then the guys that are at the bottom can't catch up. Yeah, so I don't know what the answer is to that. It's difficult.
It's the World Superbike situation. Alvaro Bautista, and I can't wait. Donington in 2 weeks' time. I've got a 15-minute sit-down interview with Alvaro, and I'm going to thrash a lot of questions. But he's only winning because he's the lightest rider. Yes, it helps, but the guy still has to brake, corner, accelerate, do all of that. It's the best rider on the best package taking advantage of that. And that's what Ducati are doing in MotoGP. That's what Ducati are doing in World Superbikes. So to now go chop them and say, oh, this is unfair. The likes of Honda and Yamaha can't keep up. Go back to a kid's school race. Right. There's one kid that was always faster in a 100 meter sprint race. But now, is it fair to slow that guy down to give the others a chance when he's worked the hardest, when he stayed after school, sprinted more, trained harder, did more? But no, it's not fair. He can't beat the other kids like that. Shame. No, it's competitive sport. It's competitive rivalry. It's up to the others now, and KTM seem to be the only one able to kind of close the gap to Ducati. And they're spending millions and millions and millions doing it. And Pit Bar is flying week in, week out, sitting there, and they're hiring as many of the Ducati guys. They're doing whatever they can, while the Yamahas and Hondas are sitting back and doing what? Sending blueprints to a 8-man German manufacturer to build their chassis, and Yamaha to have the same motorbike for the past 10 years, the same silhouette, the same everything. They're just not doing enough. So again, back to the story. Is it fair to now go to Ducati and say, because I've seen a lot of people say, no, it's time to stop Ducati. It's time to restrict Ducati. What's that going to do? What's that going to do? It's not going to do anything. It's going to smack Ducati in the face for all the hard work they've done. If anything, I would say put more Ducatis on the grid, because maybe, give Marquez a Ducati, because then at least we'll see a Marquez challenging up at the front. That's what I say. That's what I want to see. I want to see a Marquez challenging up at the front. I want to see him do it on a Honda. But if he's not going to be able to do it on a Honda, same with Fabio. If he's not going to be able to do it on a Yamaha, I want to see him do it on a machine that he can, whether that be a KTM and a Aprilia or a Ducati. But I say let that happen sooner rather than later, before we lose them, because they just go, okay, well, I'm not going to get the package. Let me hang my leathers up. I don't want to see a Marc Marquez at the age of 30 hang his leathers up when he's still got so much to offer the sport. But at the same time, what is the answer? 8 Ducatis inside the top 10 or whatever it is. What is the answer other than Yamaha and Honda pulling their socks up?
But MotoGP has always been where one manufacturer is better than the other. Honda dominated for how many years? Yamaha dominated for how many years? Now it's Ducati's turn. And like you say, they've put in their effort, and they deserve to be there.
They do deserve to be there, and it's really a hard one, because, like you said, when you've been in MotoGP the way we have, and you see the bigger picture, and you see a lot of the comments that go out there, it hurts because it's the sport you love. You have more of an understanding for it. We do forget that these are human beings at the end of the day, because we treat them like property because we're fans. And in any sport, football, cricket, whatever, once you're a fan, those athletes and those people are objects to you, and they're property to you. But there's more to it. There's more to it when you're inside that paddock and you have a more of an understanding of it. So what I can put out there and what I can ask people to take is, when you put up a message of Marquez and some Photoshop picture taking the piss out of him and telling him to retire, that guy and that family and that team have poured their heart and soul into this for so long. So those kind of comments are unjustified. I understand the odd little tongue in cheek and the Photoshop picture of Rossi waving at Mark as he's walking through the gravel turn. Yeah, we can have fun and we can enjoy the sport that we love so much. But geez, some of the comments again that came out this weekend, in terms of Mark and even Brad after he crashed, and Darren. I mean, we won't even get to Darren. Oh, crashed in turn one again. Darren, what are you doing? You shouldn't be there. For goodness sake, people, there's a bigger picture. And what must Darren do? Yes, Darren can qualify better to put himself in a better position for turn one. That I understand. But the guy's just come back from injury, and he gets taken out 2 weekends in a row. How can it be his fault? But
I got a bit upset when people were lambasting him for not going out for the second run in qualifying. It's a mistake, but the top teams have made mistakes. Fabio sat in the pits, thinks he's qualified and ends up outside the top 10. It happens, it's high pressure sport. So you've got to give the guys a bit of leeway as well.
You do. You've got to, and straight away I saw comments coming in there, and Zandria, Darren's girlfriend, still commented and then said, it was a mistake made. You take a gamble. Racing can be gambling. We've all done it in racing. You gamble. The wrong tire, right tire, wrong tire pressure, right tire pressure, fuel, everything. Darren and his team, analyzed everything that had happened throughout the whole weekend, lap time wise. Top 4 went through. He was sitting in second. Didn't look like anyone else was going to really set a time. They obviously had a feeling that they could do really well in Q2 had they had a new soft tire available. So they took the gamble, right, we're going to hold on to that soft tire to really go for it in Q2. Didn't work out. Yes, it did look like a stupid move from a fan point of view when the camera goes and there's Darren sitting on the pit wall while everyone's out there riding. You do kind of go, what are you doing? For sake. But there's again, when you're in the paddock, there's an understanding to it. There's a game plan to it. And sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So then for people to go out and say, Darren Binder doesn't belong in the championship and Darren Binder, again, completely unjustified. But Sven, it was terrible luck. I mean, Darren I feel for the guy because he just cannot get a break at the moment.
Yeah, had he used that tire and qualified on pole, everyone would have been, he's a hero, It's a mistake. It just happens.
Yeah, it just didn't happen for him, unfortunately. I'm just trying to see, there was a comment here made by someone that you could touch upon. While I look for it, what did you make of the sound of the MotoGP bikes, the Moto2 bikes, the Moto3 bikes?
On Thursday when I went down to the track, those Moto3s are crazy loud. I didn't have any earplugs. Didn't even think of taking any earplugs. Didn't have any sunscreen. I was underprepared. Yeah, but those Moto3s, when they get on the gas and they're all in a bunch, it's hectic. It's way louder than the GP bikes. So yeah, to me, those were the loudest. The Moto3s, Moto2s, great sounding bikes, and there was with the MotoGP, they got a different smell. They burn in, I don't know what it is, but you can smell a distinct different smell from the fuel, I reckon.
Yeah, they're using this kind of better for the environment fuel. Stephen Berry might be able to tell us they're using this kind of more fossilized fuel, or I don't know, better for the planet and that. But yeah, the MotoGP does definitely have a smell and a twang to it. Sven, walking down pit lane, I think you got to do it on Thursday. I don't know if you got to do it on Friday in the free practice sessions and that, but how was the vibe walking down that pit lane? You do kind of worry as if you're getting in the way or anything, but it's an awesome sight and sound walking down that pit lane when those bikes are firing up. And Sachsenring, correct me if I'm wrong, they've got two. I've never been. They've got 2 paddocks or something.
They do the main paddock, and then on their infield, they've got where all the catering and all the VIPs are. They've got a couple of bikes on the inside. While the bikes were on track, I wasn't allowed into the pit lane. Only on the Thursday when they were sitting up and everything was still quiet. Yeah, the vibe was still chilled on that Thursday. The guys are bringing out the bikes after just putting them together, starting them up. You see all the oil still burning off from having put them together. So yeah, that's the experience I had. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, no access to the pit lane itself, only to the paddock, and of course the service roads.
And the media debriefs, sitting there and looking at the riders, what kind of difference did you get compared to the interviews and that we see, on TV? Did you get, I know, especially like with Jack, you get the odd, swear word thrown in and stuff, but you do get more of a realistic answer in many ways. And can you see how sometimes journalists can pick, things apart and manipulate them to different headlines, and creating clickbait and taking what a rider said and flipping it and stuff?
Yeah, sure. It makes sense now after you mentioned with Jack, his comments about guys complaining about their bikes. I know which was intended for now after you said about Maverick. So clearly there. They get questions thrown at them, and they answer them properly, but just very guarded. They can't give away the secrets and exactly what their bike is capable of or not. So you still don't get the total picture of where they all stand or where they're strong.
And how was the atmosphere at Sachsenring? I think there was 100,000 fans or spectators, and Paddock, was it busy? How was the whole atmosphere there the whole weekend?
No, it was great. Last year they had 223,000 people for the weekend, and this year was 230. So yeah, plenty of people came in, and it's just so great that they let the fans into the pit area. And some of the riders came out and done the signing of autographs and that. So that was good to see. That's how you get the fans to come back or even like the new fans coming back. So the vibe was great, Sunday was packed. It's good to see.
Did you burn a hole in your pocket with all the merchandise that's available? You turn into a kid again, eh?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Walked away with plenty of merchandise, I'm sure. SA17, does Darren have a contract for 2024 with Intact GP, or does he have to look for a new team in 2024? So SA17, as far as I know, Darren's got a contract of intent with the team for 2024. If it went disgustingly wrong and they just didn't like each other, or there was no vibe or anything this year, they either or had the option to not go for it. So from what I can tell, and from the interview, just go onto our YouTube channel and go back to the interview we did with Darren. I think it was at the beginning of this year. We did ask him that question, and he explained it. I just can't remember the exact words he used now. I think it was along the lines of it's a 2-year contract, but with an option for either the team or Darren to cancel that second year if they feel the need to. But I know from my experience at Portimao with Darren and the team absolutely love Darren. They're fully behind him. Sven, I don't know if you got to see Darren and his team at all over the weekend.
Just was it Thursday, Thursday. Thursday I saw them, and otherwise, I was around the track more than in the pits. Prefer to be in the trackside and see the bikes coming past. And again, like you say, they're so busy on race day and on practice days. You don't see them. They're probably in the motorhomes getting ready, and then they're on the pit bikes to the pits and on the bikes. So you hardly get to see them or speak to them.
Stephen Berry says, Sven, why aren't you heading over to Assen this weekend? Much better track to watch.
Europe's expensive. You need a sponsor for these things as well.
Cost a lot of money. People don't realize, I was saying last year, I was sleeping in cars and, sleeping on, like Richard Smith from Cressini Ducati. I would share a room with him and sleep on the floor because it adds up. Flights, accommodation, fuel, food, drinks, buying MotoGP merch.
Yeah.
It all adds up. It's the greatest spectacle in the world. It really is. But yeah, it seriously adds up. But I'm sure Sven we'll get Sven to
Oh,
come
yes.
on, if not this year, definitely next year, because we need our European insider there, especially when I can't make it. Ben Yuri says, yeah, good that they less media trained, which is boring. So Ben, it is hard, like Sven says. It's nice that the Jack can come in there and speak freely. He says F this, F that, and this and this and this. But I know certainly with like the Italians and the Ducatis, I've been in a couple of medias, and I don't know if you saw it, Sven, where the rider kind of looks at the PR chick or the guy and then kind of gets permission before they answer. So there is still a certain amount of, hey, listen, script this. You can't say exactly what's on your mind.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That's why the PR people are there, just making sure that they stick to the script.
Now,
and to keep the journalist in check.
Well, this is it. They've got to give the journalists enough to make a story out of it, which give them publicity, but not to give them enough that shows the full story and their full angle or whatever, and enough to please the sponsors and enough to please the team. It's a lot. I don't know if you picked it up, but I mean, a MotoGP racer, we would all love to be a MotoGP racer, but it is intense. Never mind the training and the prep that you've got to do before it. I'm pretty sure now, from the weekend that you saw, you can now understand why a Brad Binder went to a Bjorn and said, listen, I need a rider assistant now, because there's so much involved with these guys, from physio to media to sponsors to team, then to actually getting to ride the bike.
Yeah, Doc, after the one debrief that he had with the journalist, he would get up and he started walking with his PR lady, and straight away, okay, what's next? What are we going to do? Where are we going now? And yeah, so it's a great job to have, but at the end of the day, it's a job, and it's a high pressure job. So it sounds all great, and we all want to be one, but yeah, still a lot of pressure involved.
And Sven, John McLaughlin asks here, what did Brad say about Zarco's last lap pass in the sprint race? And someone mentioned it earlier here, but it did seem from the weekend that the race stewards did back off a bit. For once, they made a lot of right decisions. As frustrating as it was that Zarco put that move on our Brad Binder, when it happened, I went, but not at one stage did I go, that's a penalty. I think they're going to give him a penalty because that's kind of the way they go. Any kind of contact in that. But I'm glad they didn't. It was the right call. But this weekend, tip of the hat to the race stewards, made the right decisions, and the racing was all better for it.
I think they watched your show last week.
I did.
100%. I mean, we want the racing to be racing, and those type of passes, even though it was a strong, hard pass, that's what we need to see. We don't want penalties left, right, and center, and then we come on next week and we complain about the stewards again. So we can't have it both ways. So yeah, we must accept them. And unfortunately, it was Brad this time. Next time, maybe it's Zarco. But he did touch Zarco, and funny enough, he helped him unlock his ride-out device in the front.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and you posted it, I think, on the MotoGP supporters group. That did Zarco say that in the debrief, or where did you hear that from?
Yeah, he did say that that he got knocked so hard that it released it, and that's why he was a bit slow through the first couple of corners and lost the places.
Talking about the riders and the media debriefs, you can see the different personalities come out. Zarco is very reserved and like kind of the teacher's pet and everything. Then you get a Jack who comes there in his leathers, and he kind of walks through, pats everyone on the back, the journalist's kind of best friend and favorite. And then you get the Brad, who's also a favorite, always smile, always happy, but answers right. And then you get some of the other riders, so you can see the different personalities come out in those debriefs.
Yeah, 100%. I like Zarco. He's very articulate. He knows, he answers properly. And Jack is like a clown. Good to have. Good for MotoGP. And also at the end of the race, he stops at all the grandstands and thanks the crowd, which is great. It's good for MotoGP. Good for any team he signs with. Gives them good publicity.
That's a big positive in signing Jack Miller, is not just what you get on the track, because sometimes you are going to get a Jack landing on the deck. He's prone to doing that. But what you get off the track, and that is gold. it's absolute gold in terms of Jack Miller. So yeah, I think it's been a fantastic signing. I really hope. Well, I have no doubt they will keep him. I cannot see KTM getting rid of Jack or Brad. Like you said earlier on, the only one who I think will definitely be gone is Paulo Espargaro to potentially make way for Pedro Acosta. We'll have to wait and see. You know, Pedro Acosta, people think, but the Tech 3 Gasgas team is not good enough for him. He would go there on a factory KTM contract, pretty much similar to what Jack and Brad is. Obviously, a little bit less because of experience or whatever. He'd be on the exact same package. You know, so is it a terrible move to go into MotoGP? I don't know. Could Pedro Acosta just do a complete swing and say, you know what? I'll give that Yamaha a go. Put me on that factory Yamaha. I want to go full factory. That's my only option. I'll give it a go. Or with Honda and say, well, if Mark's going, I'll give that. You never know whether Pedro Acosta seems like that kind of personality to me that will never shy away from a challenge, and he'll go, you know what, I'll make that thing work.
Well, it would be good to go, so maybe to Gas and do a year or two there and get used to the MotoGP park instead of getting straight onto a factory. Took him 2 years now to get up to speed in Moto2. Why not? Learn your trade. We all get upset when like Darren only got a year's contract, because we know it takes a year at least to get up to speed. So why not? You know, put your egos aside and get on that park and learn. And maybe the following year he gets a contract with the factory team.
Agreed. Mariska Hutchinson, Rob, I still think Alcoba should have had a harsher penalty for the incident in Moto2. I do. You know, that's where this imbalance with the race stewards come in, is that, you know, that really was a stupid move from Alcoba. In you know, as a racer, you've got to weigh up the corner. And, you know, I've never been to Sachsenring. I've never raced it, but you can just see it's that kind of corner that tightens up on you. It's a deceiving corner, and the guy goes barreling in on the inside of 22 other fast Moto2 riders. It can only end in one way. But he got the penalty. That was, you know, in that kind of instance, I agree with the penalty system. I still think it should, after the race, be sat down and then say, right, your next race, you're going to start at the back of the grid or a 3 grid. You know, I still think it should be sorted out after rather than during the race. But in that situation, you know, Alcoba did it to himself. It was a pathetic move. Should have been a harsher penalty, you know, yes, but either way, he did get a penalty. SA17, Rob, when can we expect Darren to fight with the Costas, Dixons, Arbolinos in Moto2? Do you believe Intact GP can help Darren to fight for championship in 24? Strongly believe he has the pace. So I'll answer the question quickly before I get Sven's kind of topic on that. You know, Darren just needs consistency. Darren needs 3 or 4 finishes now. You know, even if it's 15th, 16th place, Darren just needs a couple of races and laps under his belt. You cannot develop or improve or progress lying on the deck. And this is Marc Marquez's problem and Jean Mir's problem and Alex Rins' problem. You can't develop or progress lying on the floor or lying in hospital. Darren's had a very unlucky start to the season. He's made some mistakes himself. There's no doubting that. And that's the frustrating part with Darren, if I'm being honest, and that's why a lot of his fans do get frustrated and say these silly things. There's a little bit more patience needed with a Darren Binder and a Brad Binder sometimes compared to some other riders, but the pace is there, the talent's there. He's got to just mold it now. I think he's got a good team. That Intact GP team is good. I think they'll give him the package. Whether or not to challenge Pedro Acosta and Arbolino at the moment, I think it's still early days. Certainly towards the end of the season, if he can string a good couple of races together, I have no doubt that Darren will be a top 5 contender, you know, more often than not. And then for 2024, could be a top contender for, if not the championship, certainly top 3, certainly top 5, because again, and this is no disrespect to the riders that are there or coming through, you know, there's not this abundance of Brad Binders and Jorge Martins and Pecco Bagnaiyas coming through Moto3 and Moto2 at the moment to justify that, you know, Darren can't be one of the top contenders there. So, yeah, Darren, for me, needs a couple of good performances, qualifying and, more importantly, race performances before we can start seeing him the best out of him. The guy's been so up and down, disjointed, that wrist injuries pushed him back a long time, taken out 2 race weekends in a row. The good thing now is that he's got Assen straight away next weekend. You know, he's not having to. If that happened going into the 4 week or the 5 week break, that's the worst feeling in the world, having to wait. But yeah, Sven, give us your little review on Darren and the future for him.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got the capabilities of running up front, just like Brad has. Intech team is good. They've got a Moto E team. They've got a Moto 3 team. It's Sasaki. Okay, he was unlucky, he got robbed on the last corner. But yeah, it shows that they've got the know-how. It's not like a RNF team that's got all the good bikes and they can't set them up. So yeah, definitely the team is there. It's important that which we don't know now, that he has a contract for next year, because then the pressure's sort of off, because he's nowhere in the championship now. Just get on the bike, ride. That's why it was so unlucky for him to get taken out in the first corner, where he needs the laps now. That should be his goal now for the rest of the season, is just to get on, do the laps and finish races, to set himself up for next year, which you always said last year already as well. Use this as a building year and then attack next year. So it's definitely.
That's got to be the game plan. Just let all this crap kind of happen this year, progress, develop as much as you can to put your best foot forward for 2024. So let's hope that can happen. Stephen Berry, Guevara and Garcia will be a force in Moto2 next year. I agree. Guevara is not really getting anything done at the moment. He's still got a lot to prove. Garcia, I have been impressed with. What are the positives I take from the weekend in Darren, and this is me as a fanboy looking at the positives, but also from the outside, you've always got to take the positives out of every bad situation. Darren's come from this injury, he hasn't had a lot of track time, and even at Mugello, he's still able to come straight away and be faster almost out the bat compared to a lot of the other rookies. Guevara, Foggia, he's faster straight away than these Moto3 riders that were consistently faster than him in Moto3, if you know what I'm saying. Like Guevara dominated Moto3 last year. Darren, every time he's gone out on track, he's pretty much been faster than them. Even now, he came back and even despite the mistake in qualifying, he out-qualified, I think, Joe Roberts, Dennis Foggia. He out-qualified a lot of good names with very limited track time and that he's had, the mistakes that he's made and the unluckiness that he's had. He's still able to do that kind of thing. So those are the positives that I look at. That's what I look at and go, there's something in there. It just needs a little bit of luck. It just needs a little bit of nurturing. And it just needs a little bit of molding, and then it'll go. Darren's been beaten down for the last 4 or 5 years, by race stewards, by everything that's happened to Darren. Darren's been pummeled into the ground. The fact that the guy still is able to smile at a racetrack amazes me. And Sven, you saw it. You posted that picture. He couldn't even get into the track before fans he's loved. He really is loved. And Darren just needs something to go his way. When Darren gets this little bit of luck and this confidence that he needs, man, the kid is going to be stupid fast. And I've seen a mentally strong Darren is untouchable in many ways, because the kid's got balls of steel. There's no doubt about it. But it's great that you've got that, but you've got to manage this a little bit.
No, that's why it's important that he gets the laps under his belt now, because of the Moto3 kids coming up. We saw with Acosta, he dominated Moto3. He came up. It took him a year, So these kids that are coming up aren't going to just dominate or start winning straight away. It takes a year at least. So that's why it's important that he gets a step ahead of them and finishes out the year strong and finishing races, so that he is a step ahead of them before they come.
Definitely. Brian Ritchie, Rob, Stephen Orndal, 10th at the 24-hour at Spa. Yes, Brian, thank you so much. Stephen Orndal, great with his Honda team. They had terrible bad luck. They had oil leaks. They were down in 18th place at one stage. So to fight back to 10th, brilliant ride by Stephen and his team. Unfortunately, Sheridan Moraes and his team, that Yamaha threw a piston out of itself into Berlin, as Shez put it. Unfortunately, there again, more bad luck for Shez. And then there were some other great rides from South Africans all around the world. Doran Lerera in Italy, Tay Jansen van Rensburg, Chris Wright, unfortunately crashing and hurting his wrist. So speedy recovery there for you. Chris Perron Parasarasaman, he raced and got some good results overseas as well. So plenty of SA riders doing fantastic jobs overseas. Dustin Delaporte, what's your thoughts on Aaron Canet this season? Seems to be a bit of a block mentally and physically. So Dustin, I think definitely battling with some physical issues, but I think it's more mental. Sven, I don't know if you would have picked it up. I don't know if it would have been a topic of discussion, but certainly when I was in the paddock last year, there was all this talk of Connect and potentially, but there was never any real solid, you're going to MotoGP. The only talk that came was, oh no, he's full of tattoos. We don't like his kind of appearance and his look and his, he's not going to fit in our kind of team. We're not going to take him. And I think Canet thought he was going to MotoGP this year or certainly next year. And I think all that talk's gone. And to a top competitive rider and person, when you're told in many ways that you're not good enough for your appearance, it hits you. And I can see it in a Canet. He just looks, he looks like a shied away little boy now. Like, oh God, okay, people don't like me, or he just doesn't look like this proud, status and figure that he used to be. Looks like he's just gone into his shell a little bit now with everyone coming out saying, "Oh no, we don't want you."
Yeah, I actually didn't see much of the Moto2 riders or paddock itself because I was on the other side, more focusing on the MotoGP and around the track. So, but with Canet, he crashes a lot, which is his downfall. He strings together 2-3 good races, and or gets pole position and then crashes out of the race. So I think that counts against him as well.
That's the same problem I had. Listen, before Brad got the factory KTM ride, I was offered it, but then they saw my tattoos and went, Uncle Rob, we've got too many tattoos. That's the end of it. Sven, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for going to the track and being our insider there and posting all the pictures on social media and the inside information. It really is awesome. And this goes back to my argument where I just wish Supersport, they've got guys based all around Europe that cover our expenses, give us a little bit of money. We've got the access now with Motor Rider World and that we can bring a whole different dimension of MotoGP, not just Brad and Darren, but of MotoGP from a South African perspective, rather than just getting the generic of what BT Sport and everyone else. It's so awesome when there's someone like you or me in the paddock just feeding information to the South African MotoGP fraternity. So, I do hope we can make something of it a bit more permanent or a bit more regularly throughout the season and going forward. Certainly, if you do get to go to any other races, I'm a message away. We've got the pass ready and waiting for you. You're now officially on the list as a Dorna MotoGP kind of journalist, which is awesome. So, yeah, hopefully we can get you at the track a little bit more. Sadly, we won't have anyone at Assen this weekend, but I will be at the following one. After that, Silverstone, I know Nicole Breert will be there, so I'll definitely catch up with her and all the other South African fans there. But thanks again, Sven. Thanks for giving us some of your insight on the show now, and hopefully we'll be getting you to more races. If not, we'll be talking to you in future Talking MotoGP shows.
Thanks so much, Rob. It was really a great experience, and it'll just take a bit of planning to get around and go to the next GP. Once I know what my year's like, and it's easier to plan then, So, I'd be happy to do more.
Awesome. Great stuff. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Vickers Albus, I can be a journalist for Huisgenoot. Vickers, go to Huisgenoot and tell them, jy kan dit doen. Jy gaan die MotoGP Afrikaans kan dit wees. Jy moet dit doen, my seun. Brad Binder and Courtney, front page of Huisgenoot on their wedding. But make it happen, Vickers. We'll get you a pass. Get Huisgenoot to back you and pay for all your expenses. We'll get you there. Guys and girls, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great as always. Again, sorry for the delay. Next week, Monday, I can't do Monday night because I'll be in Netherlands doing some head office work for Zero Motorcycles there. So Tuesday night, we'll be talking MotoGP. So make sure you stay tuned in. I'm going to try and get another guest on the show. Unfortunately, John Eckerold won't be able to join the show for a couple of months at least. He's had some personal issues to deal with. All okay, all fine, but just something that he's unable to come on the show with us at the moment. But I would like to read the message that he did send me, his point of view, because he watched last week's show regarding race stewards and stuff. And he said, thanks for the message. Thanks for the message and notes on Freddie and Caparossi. I don't remember. Oh, no, sorry, that's me. That's me replying to him. Anyway, here's what he had to say. I watched your show yesterday and agree with you 100% regarding the penalties being posed by Spencer and his commission. The irony is that Spencer won the 1983 500 title by blatantly cheating when he simply pushed Roberts off the track in Sweden in a last lap straight line braking maneuver. Now he is the policeman, ? What a joke. Strangely, both he and Capirossi, another guy who won a world title by simply another guy who won a world title by simply pushing another rider off track, now work for Dorna in safety. How odd. And he's got two very valid points there, because I don't know much about the Spencer move, but I remember the Capirossi move taking out one of my favorite riders of all time, Tetsuya Rada, on the Aprilias, and he literally wasn't going to make the corner. T-bone Tetsuya Rada, thrashed him off, went on, won the race, won the world title. And I just never understood how he could honestly hold that world championship trophy, proudly saying he won that title when he just blatantly cheated to win it. But anyway, those are some comments from John Eckerold. Hopefully we'll have him before the end of the year on the show. Next week, I'm going to try potentially with Dave Peterson. Let's see if he's available. I think that'll be a good one to have. But keep a lookout for the link next week, Tuesday night, not Monday night. Sven, thank you once again. Everyone, thank you once again for joining in, and we'll catch up with you all next weekend. Enjoy the weekend's racing at Assen. Goodbye.